What good, what good? Now go wait up yourself, make her beat you. So he was sent to America to work and he was killed in America. Between him and his sons, they decided they were going to repopulate Jamaica. So a lot of them, you know, they died in the 90s. Cut a long story short, you know, eventually the relationship fell apart. When I told my friends I was going to apply, they just laughed at me, you know, told me I was stupid basically. They don't give that to black people, they're going to give that to you, Deanne, are you silly?
8-1 Media.
What's your name?
My name is Deanne Heron.
Alright. Deanne Heron. Where did it all begin?
Where did it all begin?
Yes.
Well, Kingston, Jamaica, I would say. I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, because that's where my mom was living at the time. But my family, my mom's family anyway, they come from Portland. And that's where I was left when I was 3 years old. I lived in Kingston with my mom and my stepfather until I was 3. And then my mom was sent for by her older aunt. And she left me and my younger sister with my grandma in Portland, Jamaica.
Where in Portland?
In, can't remember, Black Hill. Now where we live, there was a place called Rodney Hall. We live upon the hill, I can't even remember what it was called. It'll come back to me in a minute, but I know we lived up on the hill. But it was mainly, Black Hill was the main place. You'd go up a hill and then most people know about Black Hill.
You was 3 years old when your mom left.
Yeah.
And came to England.
Mm.
You can't remember at 3 years old. No way you will ever remember.
I remember little bits, to be honest. I think I might have been nearly 4, because I vaguely remember being left. And I know I used to go to school at the local church. I went to like a nursery school because my grandma used to take me every day, because she had this place which she called our grong, I think, where she used to grow all her things. And in the mornings when she went there, she'd drop me off at the church nursery school.
Was it in Kingston or?
This was in Portland.
Oh, when you reached Portland.
Yeah.
So as far as you can remember, you remember growing up in Portland, like say 5, 6, what can you remember?
Well, I lived with my grandma until I was 6, and unfortunately grandma died. I remember she became ill, and then I went to live, we went to live with my aunt, and then grandma died. But before she died, because my aunt had lots of children and there were loads of us, grandma made an arrangement for one of my cousins who had no children to take me. My aunt initially refused to let me go, but to cut a long story short, she had to, because my cousin reckoned that grandma would dream her and tell her if she, you know, my aunt didn't give me to her, she was going to kill me, basically. So my aunt was so frightened, she gave me to my cousin when I was 6, and I lived with her for nearly 3 years.
Where is this?
This was still in Portland. But we lived at a place, well, I just remember where I lived with my grandma was called Mount Elias. And where I lived with my cousin, I know there was a place called Lennox, which was nearby. And then we walked right up a hill to where she lived, but I can't remember what the hill was called. I just remember it was a long walk. And when I moved there with her, we had to leave home. Well, I'd have to go down to the river with the other people, with the other women, most mornings, and that's where we'd bathe, and then we'd carry water back up on our heads. We had a bucket on our head, and at 6-year-old, my cousin used to make me carry a bucket. By the time I got back up to her house, I was soaking wet, so I'd get a beating. And when the women realized what was happening, they then started carrying my bucket for me. And then just as we got to my cousin's house, they would put it on my head and say, all right, baby, go on now, but what good? Now go wait up yourself, make her beat you. I remember that clearly, you know. And then I'd have to get dressed really quickly, and then me and the other children would hurry down the hill to the main road from Lennox, and then there'd be a bus, so that sometimes he'd wait for us if we were late, and he'd carry us up Black Hill to Black Hill School.
All right, that's when you're going to school, is it?
Yeah, that's when I was 6. After Grandma died and I went to live with my cousin, I then went to Black Hill School, and I remember it was a long walk, so we had to run and try and catch the bus in the morning, and he'd drop us off at the school. That was Black Hill School.
So you can't remember, going back, you can't remember nothing much about your grandma?
I can, you know. I know Grandma, they call her Red Bee. Her name was Beatrice, Miss B, but they call her Red Bee because she was mixed race, but you couldn't tell her that.
Okay.
Again, that's a long story. She had long brown hair down her back, and I remember she had like bluey grey eyes. And I was told a story by one of my aunts that her mother lived with a Jewish family who she worked for. The woman couldn't have any children, so suddenly, you know, great grandma was pregnant, and when the wife found out, she wanted to take the baby away, and they were going to leave Jamaica and go back to America. So great grandma ran up into the hills and hid with my grandma, Red Bee. So she went, all the years she went to school or whatever, you couldn't tell her she was mixed race, you know, and they'd only call her Red Bee behind her back. You know? So I remember clearly.
So
yeah.
Let's go back to your aunt who you lived with.
Mm-hmm.
How was she?
She was lovely. I remember when I lived with my cousin was just horrible to me. She really didn't look after me well, and she thought I should comb my own hair because I've got long hair. And of course at 6 I couldn't comb my hair, so I'd go to school in the morning. I remember one of my cousins, she'd rush me into the toilets at the back of the school and comb my hair for me, and I was a little chubby thing initially, and the weight just fell off me. So I remember one day I met my uncle coming from, you know, where he used to plant his stuff, and he knew I love cucumbers. So I remember he took a cucumber out of his bag and gave it to me. And when I looked up at him to say thank you, his eyes were full of water. And I'm thinking, Uncle, what happened to you? Your ball? I said, no, baby, no. May have something in my eye. And I remember clearly. And apparently he went back to my aunt and told my aunt, no, you need to go and get her. She's not being looked after properly. So a couple of days after that, my aunt sent my cousins up the mountain, and I remember they came and there was a big argument with my cousin, and eventually, you know, after they threatened her and said that their dad would come and get me, she eventually packed my stuff. And I remember when I went to my aunt's house, and I remember that beautiful house, I was walking down the hill and my aunt looked up and saw me and burst into tears. So I'm thinking, at the time it didn't mean anything to me. It's only now I think, wow. And I remember her hugging me and she said, oh baby, what happened to you? Because I was so thin and she was always poking me. Mary, all right, don't worry baby, I'm gonna fatten you up before me send you to your mommy. I remember going to Black Hill School, and the teachers were very strict. You know, you had to do as you were told. But yeah, at playtime we used to go out. I can't even remember the games we used to play because I said I was very young. But I remember there were lots of things that we played, the ball games, all sorts of stuff. And if the weather was nice, there was a huge tree. I can't remember if it was a mango tree. And our teacher would take us outside and we'd sit underneath this tree and she'd teach us there. But yeah, the memories of that school, and I think it's still there because the last time I went to Jamaica, yeah, it's all been done up again now, but Black Hill School is still there.
All right.
Yeah.
When you heard that you was coming to England, were you excited?
Partly. I was excited about seeing my mum again after all the years, but I was scared. I think I was more scared than anything else because I described the trip as, you know, like traveling from the earth to the moon, but I was still breathing. That's how I described it, and that's how it felt. But yeah, I remember when I lived with my aunt, you know, my job was to feed the chickens, and you throw something that I can't remember if it was breadcrumbs we used to give them, and there'd be one chicken there, next minute they were just flying everywhere and they just come in the yard. And then I would help my cousins to sweep. We'd sweep up. I just remember my aunt they were quite well off compared to other people, because my uncle had his own sort of building business, so they had quite a good sized house.
So where this in Portland?
Yeah, and it was, I know there's a place called Rodney Hall near there. I'm not sure where their house is and still is, because my cousins have done it up now. It's all modernized now. I don't know if that bit is called Rodney Hall, but I think it is. And there's another place further down. In English is Horsewood, but in Patois is Harswood. And I remember my granny going down there to visit her friend, and I would be playing on I wasn't allowed to go down on the beach, but I was playing where all the horses and donkeys were just hanging out. And I remember that clearly, walking with Granny down that road, and she talking to her friends and me just wandering around, trying to tease the horses but keeping as far away as I could. Yeah. And feeding the chickens in Auntie's yard and stuff like that. I remember that clearly.
I don't know if you want to talk about it. You mentioned stepfather. What about father?
Now, I have never met my father to this day, and that's a common thing with the Herons, because the original Heron, Wilburn Heron, came from Scotland. He's now buried in Jamaica, and the story is that between him and his son, he did something in Scotland, I can't remember what, and instead of being sent to prison, he was sent to Jamaica and given a big highfalutin job. And between him and his sons, they decided they were going to repopulate Jamaica. But so apparently they lived in St. Elizabeth, because I asked my mom, where he came from, and she said she didn't know, but he told her he came from down the country, and I'm told that down the country is St. Elizabeth. But again, he was a well-off builder. I think she looked after their children. I'm not really sure of the story, because my mom, she took her story with her. I lost my mom last year, and my mom just kept telling lots of stories. I was told from I was little that my dad went to work she told my aunt that he came from Maroon Town. And this is Maroon Town. I don't know exactly. I know it's in Jamaica somewhere, but she said because the Maroons were the original people, Nanny of the Maroons and Kodjo, who fought the British when they came. So they have their own little town. And she said because he came from Maroon Town, when his family found out, they disowned him. So he was sent to America to work, and he was killed in America. That is the story she told my aunt, because my mother was the last of 14.
Wow.
And they sent her to Kingston, give her a job and everything. And my aunt said they didn't hear from her for months. And when she was sent to find her, she found her about to give birth to me. And that was the story she gave, that my dad had been sent to America and he was killed in America. That was what I thought.
So you got your dad's name?
Yeah, Heron.
Do you know your dad's family?
Well, we've got a Facebook group, a Heron group on Facebook, and there's loads of us. There's a lovely lady who's trying to piece us all together because there's so many of us. But most of the Herons, like me, we just say, even if we don't know the link, if you've got a Heron surname, we're related. So we're just cousins. In fact, there are two other Herons here in Manchester who are trying to trace their fathers, and they both said the same thing. We're family, so don't really care.
You could have brothers and sisters out there, Herons.
Well, my mom did eventually tell me that I had a brother called Andrew when I was in my 30s. She was ill in hospital, and she thought she was going to die. So she called me and said she needed to talk to me, and then she told me this completely different story from the one I'd known for 30 odd years, that my father had lived in Kingston and he died when I was 6 apparently, about the same time same year grandma died, I think. And then she started to tell me lots of different things. I've got a brother called Andrew who was born the same year as me. He was just a few months older. And then she was telling me a story about she worked for a family. They weren't Jamaicans, they were white, and she named me Deanne after the little girl that she was looking after, because Deanne is French for Diane. So I thought, that makes sense. But then when I told my aunt just lost it completely. My aunt said, what is she saying that to you for? Right, let me go talk to her. And eventually when Mummy was well enough and my aunt went, my aunt said, why are you telling the child all these things now? And my mum just hung her head. It must be the stupid tablet them I didn't put me on. Me not know, me talk foolishness. I'm sorry, dear, I'm sorry. Your father was killed in America, like I said. But then, as the years went by, sadly, towards her, she was 82, just before her 83rd birthday. Last year she died.
You remember the day when you're supposed to travel?
Oh yes, as if it was yesterday. That's one of the things I clearly remember, because I remember my aunt and my uncle driving me to Kingston Airport. And I was so frightened. My aunt dressed me up, as I said, in this beautiful blue suit, gloves, hat, and and I'm thinking, it's like I was going to church, because that's how adults would just go to church. But she said, no, you're going to England. You have to dress properly if you're going to England. I remember her saying that. She dressed me up, and I remember driving in the car, and my uncle kept looking at me in the rear view mirror, and joking and talking to me, and my aunt, she had her arms around me and said, it's all right, baby, it's all right, no need to worry. And that's what she kept saying. And I remember they handed me over to the stewardess, and I was in a group, I think they call them escorted children, because I was only 9. So this stewardess saw us all onto the plane. There was a whole group of us, but all the others were white American children. And even from when we first met them, they were sort of looking at me like this, and whispering to each other. And they didn't talk to me or say anything. So we went on the plane, and I remember stepping through the door and thinking, oh, it was like walking into a fridge, because I'd never felt cold like that in my life. But I was fascinated because there are so many things around me that I'd never seen. The seats on the plane, all these different people. I remember it walking to my seat and the stewardess telling me, that was my seat. And then I remember, when the plane took off and I was looking out the window and I was thinking, oh my God, am I ever going to see my lovely island and my family ever again? And the plane just took off. And it was basically like getting into a spaceship, and we took off to go to the moon. That's how it felt. And I remember the food. The first time they brought us drinks, I think she gave me coffee. Don't know why, but I didn't realize I was supposed to put milk and sugar in the coffee. And I remember having coffee. Granny always had coffee, but she said, no, that's not for picnic. Picnic not drink coffee, you need to drink chocolate. And I remember saying that. But I just said, oh right, I'm gonna try it, woo. And I tasted it and I thought, oh my God, I can see now why Granny wouldn't let me drink coffee. It's horrible. And then the food, when they brought the food, I can't remember what it was, but I just never remember seeing food like that. It was just completely tasteless. I ate it because I was hungry, but I'd never, it was just such an interesting experience. And then they dropped off the children in America. Most of them were dropped off in America. Can't remember any of them coming to Britain with me. It was just me. And I know we stopped in London, and then we came to Manchester Airport, and I think my mum got the times mixed up, so she wasn't there to meet me. So they had to phone this number that she left. It wasn't her number, it was one of the neighbours. Eventually they got hold of her, and she came to pick me up.
Mum came to the airport?
Yeah, my mum came to get me. And I remember, even though she was late getting me, they were so lovely. The stewardess looked after me. She brought me sandwiches, drinks, and, kept reassuring me. But the thing that fascinated me was just seeing people rushing around. Because in Jamaica, you don't rush. You just take your time and walk. But just see all these people thinking, and I kept watching thinking, oh, they remind me of like ants just rushing around. So when Mum came to get me, as I said, I hadn't seen her for all these, I'd forgotten what she looked like. So I saw this tall, absolutely beautiful woman walking towards me with the stewardess, and I thought, no way, that can't be my mom. Again, she had a blue suit similar to mine. And she had all this perfectly made up and her hair and everything. And she came up to me and said, Deanne! At the time, that was the first time I realized my name was Deanne. Okay. Because on my passport, it said Diane, because it was spelt the French way again, but it pronounced Deanne. So at school I was Diane, Diana. So she came, Deanne! And I thought, oh my God, she's got the wrong child. It's not me. That's not my mother. And she came up to me and she was kissing me and hugging me. And every time she kissed me and got lipstick on me, I remember, she was like, oh, sorry, baby, sorry. Oh my God, Deanne. I'm thinking, oh God, when is she going to realize she's got the wrong kid? Anyway, she took my hand and we went to the car park. And I remember there was, I think it must have been one of her friends in the taxi. And we drove from Manchester Airport down, the main road, because she lived in Old Trafford at the time. And all the way she was talking to me. And because I loved the American accent of the children on the plane, by the time I got to Britain, I'd lost my patois accent. I was speaking like an American. So I can't remember if it was her or the taxi driver. He said, I think it was him, said, I thought she just come from Jamaica. How come she sound American? And I can't remember what my mom said, but I just know they were laughing at me and everything. I was saying, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And I remember mom saying, Deanne, you don't need to say ma'am and sir, you can just say yes. I think, yes, ma'am. I just remember the drive in the taxi and looking at these houses and thinking, oh, and even though it was August, there wasn't any smoke coming out the chimneys then. I didn't see that till later on, and I too thought the houses were on fire the first time I saw smoke. And I remember the first time my mum made up the coal fire and I saw it, I ran. I thought I thought it was a fire. I'm thinking the whole house is gonna burst into flames. And those experiences, seeing a coal fire for the first time, seeing the milkman delivering milk. And he used to deliver bread. They'd have like a container of bread, not wrapped. And he'd put the milk on the doorstep and then put the bread on top of it. And the magpies would always come. If the woman didn't come out straight away and pick up the bread, wow, the birds would come and start pecking at it. But then she would come out and just take the bread and put it under her arm and then pick up. I'm thinking, really? Are you allowed to do that? You can, So that was a surprise. And I remember the first time it snowed and Mum called me. I said, Deanne, come baby, come and look at the snow. And I thought, oh yeah, because I'd seen it on films at school. But it never occurred to me that snow was ice and it was cold. So I ran outside, nearly fell. Mum had to tell me, no, don't run. When I bent down and I picked it up and it was cold, I threw it down and screamed. I ran back into the house. I said, what's the matter with you? And I said, Mommy, it just burned me. And I remember her laughing at me and said, no, it's ice. Have you never felt? I said, no, Mommy, I didn't know it was cold. The first time I felt snow.
Let's go to school.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Lord.
Where did you go to the first school?
Yeah, when I was in Old Trafford, I went to school for a couple of months in Old Trafford because the house we lived in was really old and broken down. We were the only one that lived in it. So I went to one school in Old Trafford for a couple of months, and I don't remember experiencing any racism as such.
Remember the school name?
No, I can't, I can't. Because as I said, we're only there for a couple of months. And then we moved to, there's a place near Manchester Royal Infirmary. Again, we moved to an old house there, went to school there, and that was the first time I experienced racism. Because we were lining up to playtime, and this girl came up to me, and she pulled her hand back, was about to punch me, and then the whistle went. And then she ran and lined up and said, I'm gonna get you. And she used the N word. I'm gonna get you later, N. And I thought, what? I'd never heard that word before in my life. So, yes, it was quite a shock. And then at the end of the day, finished school, there she was outside the gate with, I think it was 3 or 4 of her friends. And she just came up to me, pulled her fist back and right in my face. And I think she was going to beat me up, but I don't know if it was fortunate at the time. I suffered from nosebleeds and my nose just burst into blood and started bleeding. And when her friends saw it, one of them screamed and they ran off, so she ran off with them. So I went home covered in blood. You know, when Mum saw me and I told her what happened, she just said, "Don't take any notice of them. They don't know any better." Wow. And that was it.
That's it.
And then I had to ask. I said, "Mum, what's a nigger? What does nigger mean?" I said, and Mum looked at me, and she thought I was joking. I said, "You really don't know what that means?" I said, "No," and she had to explain to me. Who called you that? Who said that to you? And I said, "Well, the children at school." And I thought she would have gone into school and complained or something, but no, she didn't. So fortunately, again, we only lived there for a little while. I only remember that incident. And I remember the first time I could smell the food that they were cooking, in the kitchen. I'm thinking, what on earth is that? It was like boiled cabbage and other things. It was horrible. Yeah, so I wasn't very happy with the food. I know
this
that.
was like primary school then?
Yeah, this was the last, because I had my last year at primary school. So I was nearly 10. I was 10 in November. So I had my last year at primary school in England. And what happened after that? Then we moved to Wythenshawe. We were one of the first black families to move to Wythenshawe. And I went to Bagley Hall Junior School. Definitely remember that one. Because again, I suffered racism. And the teachers always used to think it was me. Kids would punch me and do all sorts of things to me. And then, the 3 or 4 of them, it was her, miss, it was Diana. So they'd punish me. But luckily there was this lovely, lovely teacher, bless him, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence clocked what was going on. And I think he told the other teachers. Because I noticed that after a while, the teachers, their attitude towards me changed. And Mr. Lawrence, he was the one who would say, "Right, come on, it's Diana's turn now. Let Diana skip." And he teamed me up with this other girl who they didn't like for whatever reason. And we were friends for years. In fact, we're still in touch on Facebook.
Black girl?
No, white girl, because they were mainly all white in Wythenshawe. But the racism, as I said, it was horrendous. Even you'd be walking on the streets and people would be in cars, they'd wind the window down and again shout the N-word at you or make monkey noises, which I just didn't understand until I was much older.
I forgot to ask you, your mom, did she have any other kids?
Yes, she did. As I said, it was 2 of us she left in Jamaica because we lived, I remember my stepdad, and he was so lovely. He looked after me. He always used to bring stuff for me to eat. And then my mom had a child with him. Well, when she left us, she left us with my grandma, but he came a couple of days later and took my sister away to his family.
All right.
And left me with my grandma. But when I came here, my mom had 3 other children.
All right.
She was with somebody because my aunt had sent for her to marry somebody. And I can say all of this because, most of the people I'm referring to, they've passed on now. She was sent for to marry somebody, but she didn't like him, so she ran away. Met somebody else. And by the time I came here, she'd had 3 other children. But they're separated. So she was there with 3 children. So I remember, and my brother reminded me that my mum went out to work a couple of weeks after I came here. I was 9 years old. She left me to look after my 5-year-old sister, 3-year-old brother, 1-year-old baby. Wow. And she gave me instructions. There was a belt hanging behind the door. If the door knocked, you are not to look out the window and don't open it. In fact, don't go downstairs. And I was told what I was to do at 7 o'clock. Make them hot chocolate, bread or bun, whatever they want. Make sure they're tidy. That's what's called, you're tidy. And put your nightclothes, and they were to be in bed by 7:30. Give the baby his bottle, change his bottom. And then I was to tidy and be in my bed by 8 o'clock. And she said to me if she ever came home and saw me still up, then, you know, I'd know about it. And on the one occasion that happened, I forgot and got up to go to the toilet, and she came home. And yes, I was beaten. You know, so after that, whatever time she came home, if I was awake, I'd pretend I was asleep.
So when you came, you never seen his stepfather, nothing?
I met him because he came to visit a few times. But no, she wasn't living with him then. She got married later on. Yeah, when we moved to Wythenshawe, she met somebody and got married. And he was lovely, but he just kept himself to himself. You know, he'd come home from work, eat his dinner and go upstairs and watch TV.
So how long did you spend in Wythenshawe High School?
Well, I did my full year. I was at the lower school. Then I went to the upper school. The funny thing is, I don't remember the severe racism that I suffered at secondary school, because at first there were just a few black children, but then the children from my side started getting buses and coming up to Newhall Green. Yeah. So then I remember people like making monkey noises and, you know, teasing my accent. But that was about all. And I had friends. And sometimes it was my friends who would defend me, you know, and tell them to shut up and go away. Yeah, so, yeah, I don't remember any severe racism or anything like that at Newhall Green. And I remember doing my GCSEs, but because my mum worked evenings, in all the years I was in school, I don't remember her once going to parents' evening or anything like that. Even when I got my GCSEs, she was at work, so she couldn't go. And then I wanted to do A-levels, and she told me she couldn't afford for me to do A-levels. I needed to go and get a job. She couldn't afford it. So
did you have to pay for it?
No, she couldn't afford to keep me, to look after me, to go and do A-levels. Wow. I needed to go and get a job because I had a Saturday job. I remember I worked at Littlewoods from I was 16. I had a Saturday job. And then I used to work there during the holidays as well. And I'd have to give mum part of that money. Because she was struggling, in all honesty. She was strict. But when I look back now, she had a rough life. Imagine being on your own in those days when you couldn't get benefits here, benefits there. You had to pay for everything. And I'm thinking, I remember we were always well fed. We always had good clothes, even though she used to get most of our clothes from the jumble sale. But that was normal in those days. We'd have lovely warm clothes in winter, you know, and we'd always have food. I remember that, even though, you know, she'd run off to work, I'd have to rush home from school for her to go and get the bus to go to work. She'd have dinner, would be ready. I would just have to warm it and give it to my brothers and sisters. And then she'd start cooking my stepdad's dinner, and I would finish it off, you know, for when he came home. But as I said, when I wanted to do my A-levels, I had to leave home. I left home at 17 so that I could do my A-levels. Luckily, one of my cousins, bless her, she arranged for me to go and live with one of her friends on the other side of Manchester, Miles Platting. And her friend was like a second mom to me. And I remember I had to get 2 buses to school in the morning. I had to get a bus into the centre of Manchester. Then I got the 101 bus up to Newhall Green High School. And I was really struggling, but luckily my cousin's friend was so lovely. I gave her a little bit of what I could, but when the head of year found out, she I don't even know what happened. She called me into her room one day and she said, Diana, they call me Diana, no matter how many times I said my name was Deanne, it was Dawn, Donna, you know, but Diana mainly. So Diana, are you not living at home anymore? And I thought, oh my gosh, how did she find out? No, miss. Diana, what's happened? So then when I explained to her, I said, Diana, right, don't worry, I'm going to sort this out for you. Because she said, Diana, but how is this lady looking after you? I said, well, miss, I've got a Saturday job and I'd give her some of that. But, you know, I need it I have to get my bus fare and, you know, whatever. So she sorted it out. She got me a bus pass. And I think she sorted out, I got some kind of benefits, because I remember I was able to give my cousin's friend some money, you know, for my food and everything after that. And this lady would check up on me all the time to see how I was, if I was okay and if I needed anything. And yes, I got my A-levels. And I remember for the first time being in school here, when we got our certificates, Marjorie, bless her, she came all the way from Mouse Platting up to Wythenshawe, the first time I ever had somebody come into school for me. And in the huge hall, when they called out my name, Diana Heron, she stood up and started, whoa, oh my gosh, Deanne, well done, baby. And everybody was sort of looking at her like that. We've got a mad woman in the house. And then they all started laughing, and then they started clapping and cheering. I felt so, honestly, my eyes filled up with tears as I walked up on the platform. And I got my A-level certificate.
Well, your mum did?
No, this lady Marjorie who looked after me.
What about your mum?
My mum didn't go. My mum said she couldn't. She had to go to work.
Okay.
So she didn't go. When I got my GCSE certificate, she said she couldn't go because she's got to go to work. So.
Didn't mum know how important these things was to you?
Oh yes,
Oh,
because I wanted to go to university. I couldn't afford to, but luckily I got a job with the local authority, and they had this scheme where you could have day release to go to MMU, Manchester Metropolitan University. And of course, you know, when I told my friends I was going to apply, they just laughed at me, you know, told me I was stupid, basically. They don't give that to black people. They're going to give that to you, Deanne. Are you silly? But I applied and I got it.
Can you remember the year?
I can't remember, you know, but I would have been in my early 20s. And I remember I had a full-time job with the city council, and I was going to university 1 day a week. And then I was up like till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning doing the work. But I got my degree.
Growing up, you used to go like clubbing and that? Well, as a young...
Yeah, man. When I left home, I told you I left home at 17.
Yeah.
And I lived with, you know, my second mummy, Marjorie. But I wasn't allowed to go out without them. And my cousin, I remember my cousin Harvey, and then my cousin's husband, Billy. They would watch me whenever we went to clubs. If anybody came to talk to me, you know, they'd come up to me. What are you talking to him for? Come here. Don't talk to him. So they would protect me, and I wasn't allowed to go out without them. So I used to go to the Russell Club, and then there's Carmel Road. So I used to go to all the clubs, and sometimes parties, but again with them. So yeah.
So have you met someone and got married or anything like that?
No, I met someone, but I don't know, somehow my relationships didn't work out, because my aunt who lived in London, she came down, and because of the way my mum was treating me, she insisted that my mum had to send me to London to stay with her for half of any holidays I got from school. So when I went to London, again, I used to go out with my cousins, and I met, because I have 2 daughters, so I met my daughter's father in London. So he was a Londoner, and I was supposed to move to London, but because I'd just got a job with the city council, all my family were here basically, I just said, well, no, I can't. And then he had a job in London, so he said, well, I can't move to Manchester. So to cut a long story short, you know, eventually the relationship fell apart. But no, I've never been married. I don't know, I think I can just run too fast. I've been proposed to more than once, but I don't know. I just never found my, I don't know, I call him, I can't remember what we call him now, my spiritual person, my soul. I've never found him, because I've met quite a few men, but I just didn't feel we were on the same page. So eventually, you know, the relationship just fell apart.
Well, it's not too late. But...
Well, I don't know now. I'm at a place where I think I just want to travel and enjoy life. And I want somebody who is in that same situation, but they're not going to depend on me for money. You know, they can finance themselves, and they're prepared to look after me as well, not just one way. And I was always had the finger pointed at me and told, oh, well, it's you, you're too full of yourself and blah, blah, blah. But a few years ago, I joined this group. There's a lovely lady, I don't know if I can mention her name. She set up a group of women, professional black women. And when we first met and we started sharing our stories, I realized that the stories were almost exactly like mine, where they said some of them had been married, some of them married twice, and they had the same stories about the way their men treated them. Their men basically didn't respect them, they just wanted to control them. And, well, as I said, yeah, so I'm in this group with these ladies, we go on holiday together and we do all sorts of stuff together. And no, I hate being alone, I hate being on my own. But if it's a choice of being on my own or being in a relationship where I'm miserable, which I know a lot of my friends are, they've been married 20, 30 years, husband's got one bedroom, wife has got one bedroom, and they only stay together because of the children, then no, that won't work for me.
I understand that your hobby is writing poetry. How did it start?
Right, well, it's not just poetry, it's writing a lot of things. And it started because my primary school teacher, Mr. Lawrence, the one who took me under his wing and protected me, he used to read poetry to us at the end of the day. And I remember there were things like Matilda, can't remember who it was by, Matilda who was burnt, she burnt the house down, and there was the highwayman and things like that. And I remember one day Mr. Lawrence came up to me and he said to me, Diana, you really liked those poems, didn't you? And I said, yes, sir. He said, right, take this book, take it home with you. And when you finish reading it, bring it back. I loved it. And that was when I got into poetry, but it wasn't writing, I just used to read. It wasn't until I got to my teenage years that I started writing poems and then just writing bits down. And then as I got older and I talked to friends, I realized that I had a unique experience. Most of them were born here. They'd never been to Jamaica. And when I thought, you were born in Jamaica? Yeah. So I had the experience of Jamaica in the countryside, and then Jamaica, and then England coming here. So then I thought, well, if they don't know all of this, maybe I need to write these things down. So I call it my legacy. So I wrote one volume, first of all, which I call Partner Money Stories, because the partner to me was a pivotal thing in the community. It was always a woman who ran the partner lady. And before people had mobile phones, most people didn't even have house phones. If anything was happening, you'd tell the partner lady. You're having a baby, you're getting married, somebody died, you tell the partner lady, and she would tell everybody else. And as you know, a lot of black people, when they came here in the 50s or 40s, 1948, from Windrush came here, 60s, weren't allowed to open bank accounts. So the partner was how they bought houses, how they were able to send money back home to feed their children. So this is why, because I realized the partner was, very important in the community, I decided to call my stories Partner Money Stories. And I love the Jamaican sense of humor. And yet when we lived in Within Shore, my mom and her friends would take it in turns to go to each other's houses and have dinner. And somebody would bring the fish, somebody would bring the curry goat, and everybody would, would all get together in the iconic West Indian front room, which, people my age will remember, with the glass fish and the flowery doily and all that. Yeah, and the blue spot radiogram with the vinyl records, I used to play all sorts of stuff on. So yeah, those were my memories, and I decided I had to capture those memories.
Tell me about some of the jobs that you done.
All right, well, as I said, my first Saturday job was with Littlewoods, and then I used to work during the holidays. I worked for the Inland Revenue for 2 years as a clerical officer. But I wanted to be a pilot, would you believe, an RAF pilot when I left school, because the RAF came and did a presentation at my school, and I thought, yeah, that's what I want to be. And then when I told the teacher, she just looked at me and said, don't be so silly, Diana. I thought, what are you talking about? And then when I went home, and I said, Mum, and I told her they came and they said, Mum, I want to be a pilot, I'm going to apply. And my mum just burst out laughing. And she said the same thing. And she said to me, Deanne, how many times do you ever see a black woman pilot? I said, pardon, what do you mean? She said, don't be so silly. Of course you can't be a pilot. And I was so upset. I ran upstairs in tears. My brother never forgot, because he got together with my daughter, and for my 40th birthday they arranged for me to have a flying lesson. Can you believe? I loved it. Imagine zooming over Manchester in a little plane. I'm thinking, oh, this is what I should have done. I wanted to be a pilot. What happened? But I actually signed up for the RAF because I said, I'm not going to listen to her. I'm going to do it. I signed up for the RAF. I had my medical and everything, and I was just waiting to start this September. And then, you know, my mum was saying all sorts of things which I won't even mention. And then that was when I got the job with the Inland Revenue, and I decided, no, Mum's right, I'm being silly. I'm going to take the job with the Inland Revenue.
Yeah.
So
from that job,
I left there because they were really racist and horrible to me. So I left there, and then I got my job with the City Council. Now, I had a job working as an assistant accountant in Cheetham Hill. And again, it was a small firm. They were white, but they were so lovely, really lovely people. And I left there. I had to leave there when I moved from Miles Platting to Longside. I was given a house in Longside. That was after I had my daughter. And then I got a job working for the City Council. Again, started off as clerical officer, support worker, worked my way up. So by the time I left, I was managing the refuge for homeless women on Plymouth Grove. And I left there because I got a job. There was a refuge for women and children fleeing domestic violence, ethnically diverse, called Sojourner's House, not far from here. So I got a job there and managed that for just over 2 years. And then, you know, my youngest daughter, she needed a bit of support because I felt my job was taking up too much of my time and I wasn't spending enough time with her. So I decided I was going to do fostering so I could spend more time with her, take her to school, be here during the holidays and whatever. So I resigned from that job.
Manager job. You resigned from the manager job?
Yes, love, that's exactly what my friend said. Deanne, are you crazy? You're going to resign from that to go and do fostering? And at the time, the City Council were paying hardly anything for fostering. And then I had a friend, a friend in Birmingham. She said to me, Deanne, have you thought of applying to a private company? I thought, what? There are private companies that do? And she said, yes. So when I looked into it, there was just one company in Manchester. They didn't have any other black foster carers, so they jumped on it and were happy, you know, to take me on board. And the money they were paying me was actually more than I was being paid as a manager. So I started off, you know, looking after my daughter. I had this little boy and his baby sister placed with me initially, and I'm telling you, it was hard work, but the social workers, the feedback I got from them, Deanne, the difference you make to these children, you know, because I just used to sit with them and talk to them, and because of that, the agency they brought me into the training for the other foster carers, the white foster carers, to teach them how to look after black children, our skin care, hair care, stuff like that.
So these was black children?
Well, most of them, no, I had children all different colours.
Oh, the first one you was looking at?
The first two I got, they were white. The little boy, he was about 4, I think, and his sister was 1.5. They were placed, because it was short-term fostering I was doing. They were with me, I think, for about 6 months, and then they moved them on to a permanent place. And I've had loads of children, different ages. I had a little Indian girl, and she was adopted, but unfortunately that fell apart. And she came back to me, and she stayed with me again until she was adopted by another couple, and that was successful. I've had loads of all different nationalities, you name it, I've fostered them.
How many children over the years? Can you remember?
I think it's over 40.
Over 40?
Yeah, I didn't even realise it was that many myself until I was retiring. When I became ill, I told them I wanted to retire and they wouldn't let me. Saying, no, Deanne, just wait until you're better. And then one of the ladies, the support workers, she actually said to me, Deanne, you know, you've fostered, she said, like 42 children. She said, I've fostered over the years. And because I used to do training with them, she said, okay, Deanne, right, if you want to retire, even if you retire, we want you to, when you're better, still come and do some training for us, you know, when we need it. So, all right then, yeah.
The longest one you kept?
The young lady who's with me at the moment. I've got a young lady who, she was placed with me when she was in her second year, I think, at secondary school. And she is going to be 27 this year. She has a mild learning disability. So they turned her placement into an adult placement when she got to 18. But I had to fight tooth and nail for that. They wanted to put her in a flat on her own. And because if you talk to her, she looks like she's all right. But luckily school supported me. They were absolutely brilliant and said, no, Deanne is right. You know, you can't put her in a place. So eventually they agreed for her to stay here. And she was dead upset because she's white. But as far as she's concerned, we're her family. You know, she's never leaving. She says she's staying with me. So she's still with me. So yeah, and that's what, 14 years she's been with me, I think.
Have you met any of the parents?
The real yes, because we used to have contact. So I used to take some of the children to contact. So I've met different parents over the years, you know, when I take the children to contact. And unfortunately, you know, most of them, you could see that they just had their own stuff going on. And this is why I'm thinking social services need to do more and provide, you know, counselling and parental training for people earlier when they're struggling, instead of leaving them before the children have to be taken away. So, you know, I've met some lovely parents. I've met some who obviously got serious issues, but yeah, I've met some lovely ones who...
Some of the parents, are they fighting to get back their child then?
Not the ones, no, not fighting, because I think most of them agreed that once the children were taken into care that they couldn't cope. I mean, there was one lady who wanted her daughter back, but I think she agreed after a while that no, she didn't want her daughter to go, but she couldn't cope. And when she realised that she could still have regular contact, then she sort of settled down and said, all right, yeah.
So there's kids that are problem child like?
I wouldn't say problem. Most of them have, because it's a private agency, we got the high-end children. A lot of them came with psychologists and counsellors and all kinds of things. And yes, they had serious behavioural problems, a lot of them. But when you look into their past and saw the things that they went through, I could see why they were behaving the way they did. So I would just sit them down and talk to them, and I say, right, you know, when you come into my home, there are special rules here that you have to obey. I will never be horrible to you. You will always get your meals when you need it, eat your nice clothes, but you need to be nice to me as well. You know, and I'd say that to them, and of course at first, you know, they'd just look at you as if you're crazy. But, you know, when they did anything, I would sit them down instead of shouting at them. And sometimes I did shout. But I'd sit there and say, okay, come on, let's talk. I told you not to do A, B, C, but you did it anyway. So what was that about? And of course, well, I said, hello, do you hear me shouting? Don't shout, just tell me. What happened? Why did you do that? And then, well, this happened, and then this, and then this. I said, actually, do you know, maybe I was wrong. Okay, but you should have come and spoken to me for, and you know, the look on that, when I say that to them, what? And then a couple of times, I'd always say to them, right, if I do something and you think I'm wrong, instead of shouting at me or going and doing something else, why don't you just come to me? Deanne, can I talk to you? And then come and tell me. That worked so well.
Fostering now, is any of these children you kind of fall for? Yes,
there are a few that I didn't want to go because my fostering was what they call temporary. So when they came from home and they were hurt and there was all sorts going on, then they'd place them with me and I would sort of try and help them to calm down and help them to understand what was going on. And often I would get children that had come from other foster carers who couldn't cope with them. So, you know, I would try and deal with them until they were moved on to permanent places. But yes, there were quite a few who I didn't want to go. I remember there was a lovely young man and he was giving nothing but trouble at school. But he never gave me any trouble. when it was autumn, the leaves out here, they'd outside, and he'd be sweeping up. He washed my car for me, he did everything. And we went to a meeting, and they were saying, oh, he's done this and he's done that and he's done... I'm saying, pardon? Have I got the right child? And when I came home, he went, sat on the sofa, put the TV on with his thumb in his mouth, and they're sucking his thumb watching TV, and I lost my temper with him. I just said to him, what on earth are you doing? You are perfect when you're here. Why are you behaving like this at school? Honestly, I nearly cried. He took his thumb out of his mouth. They're only pretending that they care about me, Deanne. You're the only one who care about me. I thought, my eyes filled up. Honestly, I said, oh my gosh, really? Is that what you think? And I sat him down and spoke to him. And, you know, just sort of, and then I said to him, well, it's not that they don't care about you, love, it's their job. And then I explained a few things to him, and I said, well, you know, you're better than this, and I want you to tell me that you're going to change your behaviour. You're not going to do that. Next time the teacher says something to you, you're not going to do that. Come home and tell me. And if there's anything happening, I'll go into school and deal with it. I said, oh, all right, Deanne, all right. And he changed. Yeah.
Are you in contact with?
Not anymore. I'm usually in contact with them after a while, after they've moved, because the new carers or whoever adopts them will keep in touch and tell me how they're doing. Most of them end up going to university. There are a few fallen, you know, off the rail, and they've ended up in prison, unfortunately. But the majority of them, they've been all right. But no, after a few years, the contact stops and they move on. Yeah, there is actually. There are a couple. There's a young black girl who stayed here for a while, and she's still in touch with me. I mean, she's all grown up now with her own child, but yeah, she's friends with me on WhatsApp, and she contacts me from time to time just to check if I'm all right.
Yeah. You must like to see them growing up. Right?
Yeah, because she's done really well. You know, she went to university, everything, and you know, she's done really. And there are a few of them that have done, you know, quite well. Yeah, but she's the main. There's one in particular. She keeps in touch with me all the time. But there are a few others. Every now and then, you know, they'll sort of touch base. Right. So I do a lot of things. I'm a qualified counsellor, as I think it's a CBT therapist. I work for the city council. I go into old people's homes and do storytelling, story writing. My first love is writing, and I write poetry mainly now, which I call my therapeutic processing. And this is what I've been doing, especially during the COVID era, because I'm just about to have I've had 2 volumes of poetry published already called Contemplation, and I'm about to have 2 more volumes published called the COVID era, which is really poems that have sort of shown how I've made sense of everything that's happening and how I've stayed sane, really. And initially I wrote 2 volumes of short humorous stories about my Jamaican culture called Pardon the Money Stories. And then, actually, it took me about 10 years to write this novel. I had a huge novel called The Mandari Chronicles, published in 2020. And it was as a result of dreams that I kept having. Because when I saw those films, Harry Potter and all those things, you know, about dwarves and elves, my overactive brain started thinking, what? Dwarves and elves? Where did I get that from? And then I started having these weird dreams. I was taken back in time, and I was shown that it wasn't one race originally. It was 3 races: dwarves, elves, and humans, yes. And then I was shown how they developed. And then they had the race wars, and you know, tried to kill people. And then that was why we had the flood. And God took the elves off the earth and took them back to heaven. And the humans killed off most of the dwarves. That was my dream. And then there was a group of people who God took. He sent these people from another planet with a ship to come and get these people.
That's a dream?
Yes.
Still in the dream?
Yes. And took them to this planet called Mandar. Yeah. And basically, I was seeing how they developed on Mandar compared to how they developed on Earth. and I was jotting things down. I'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, like, whoa, that was so, it was so vivid. I kept writing things down, and then of course I added to it and, you know, created the Mandara Chronicles, a novel in 3 books.
Okay, so where can you get these books about?
Well, I've got a website. So my website is Partner Money Stories. It's all the W, Partner, Pardner, one word, partnermoneystories.co.uk. But if you Google my name, in fact, I nearly died of shock a few years ago when my daughter said to me, Mum, have you ever Googled your name? I thought, Google my name? Why? Mom, next time you're on the computer, Google your name. When I put my name in, Deanne Heron, I nearly died of shock when I saw all the things that came up. I didn't realise, because there's a lot of things I've taken part in, and they're actually on Google. So you'll see my website as well on Google. You can buy all my books from there, signed copies, but they're all available as well on Amazon. And there's a Kindle version of my sci-fi novel on Amazon. But you can get them from me instead, and then they'll be signed.
So what was it doing online?
They're doing quite well, actually, because of course people aren't reading books as much as they used to. So I found when I published them initially, I was selling a lot more than I'm selling now. But when I go to events, again, I've not been well, and because of COVID, I've not been going to any events. But during this month, which is Windrush month, there have been lots of events where I've been invited to go and share my poems and bring my books along. And I've been to quite a few where, to my surprise, I went with a full suitcase of books and came back with an empty suitcase.
Wow.
So, you know, I've done quite well the last few weeks, you know, going to events, but I'm just really careful that I don't sort of go to too many things because I have to take care of my health. So, yeah. That's what I've been. So I'm actually quite pleased, and I'm having a new website done now because the old website, I think, is as old as me. So I'm having it updated. So hopefully, you know, I'll be able to sell a few more books once it's all sorted. And then my friend, bless him, he's sorting out my Instagram for me because my Instagram account was hacked a few years ago, and then there were lots of false accounts on there in my name. So he set up a new one for me. So hopefully we'll take off again.
So this is what you want to do? You want to sell books and write books? And
my main, of course I want to sell books because yes, I want to get the money. I'd love to be a millionaire because then I can help my family and, you know, go all over the world. But my main reason for writing is to leave my legacy behind, because I'm thinking, again, my mom was last of 14. All my aunts have gone, all my uncles have gone. And it's only the little bits that I remember my aunts telling me over the years that I remember of their lives or of our family. So I'm thinking, you know,
back there. She's the last of 14 children.
Yeah, my grandma had 14 children.
Your grandmother had 14
Yes,
children.
yes.
Can you remember how many girls or how many boys?
Well, I remember just a few of them. There was my aunt Cynthia, who was here. It was her and her husband she sent for my mom.
Yeah.
And then my aunt Nair, she was the one who looked after me after my grandma died. There were a few other aunts who I vaguely remember. Sometimes we'd go and visit. And there was my uncle Ralvin. He was the one, yes, again, when, you know, grandma died, again, he took me under his wing and looked after me. I can't remember who else, but I know there were loads of them. But I think by the time I was born, quite a few of them had passed on, yeah, because when my mom passed last year, she was nearly 83. So a lot of them, you know, they died in the 90s. So, yeah, they've all gone now. But I just thought they've gone and taken their stories with them. And just the few stories that they shared with me. You know, for instance, one of my aunts told me that we come from the Igbo tribe. And there are very few Caribbeans who know that. And she said her mom told her, that's my granny, and granny's mom told her, you know, don't forget, you need to tell your children you come from the Igbo tribe and make sure they tell their children. But most people haven't passed that on. My mom didn't tell me. You know, if Auntie didn't tell me that we came from the Igbo tribe, I wouldn't know. So these are the things I've got to pass on to my family. I've got 2 beautiful daughters and 5 grandsons. because my oldest girl, she's got 3 grandsons, and my youngest, she's got 2. They live in Texas. She lives in Texas with her husband. Yeah, my youngest baby, she lives in Texas with her hubby and 2 absolutely beautiful children. And, you know, as a single parent, I brought 2 children up on my own. And this is what I say to people. Just because you're a single parent doesn't mean you have to sit at home and feel sorry for yourself. I went to university and did my degree. I strive to be the best I can be. I own a house in an area where most couples now can't afford to buy a house. Because I bought this house when nobody wanted to live in this area because they're all falling apart and there were a lot of ladies of the night in the area, so nobody wanted to live here. Now, I couldn't afford to buy a room in my house. And I was determined that my daughters were going to be the best that they could be. You know, my youngest daughter is a doctor of psychology. She's training to be a professor. It's my baby. My oldest girl is a lawyer. She's got a big, high-flying job with the government department. And as I said, I'm a single black woman. So if I can do that, and this is what I'm trying to say to people in the community, you know, re-embrace the village mentality. It's not just about you. Where are your grandparents? And when I go into schools, I go into schools and do Black History presentations, or I did before COVID. I've just started again now. And I say to the children, when you go home, talk to grandma, granddad. Oh, if they don't live with you, ring them and ask them, Grandma, what did you do when you were my age? What did you eat? How did you... And just find out about your grandparents. And I say to the old people, when I go into, I don't like calling them old people, elders. When I go into the homes, I say to the elders, have you ever shared your stories with your children? And at first they won't talk to me. They said, share what? They don't need to know that. What do I need to know that for? And I said, well, Mommy, how are they going to know? They have fingers pointed at them and they're told that their parents only came here to claim benefits and to pinch people's jobs. How are they supposed to know the truth if you don't tell them? And he's go, yes, you're right, you know. And I have to reassure them again and again, anything that is said in this room is confidential. It won't leave this room. If I'm going to share anything, I will make sure I get your signature in writing that you allow me to share that. And then when we get together, and I said, okay, so who wants to tell me a bit about themselves? And they all look at me, she's I have nothing to say. And I said, Mom, come on, Mom, tell me about yourself. What, you know, what work did you do when you came here? How old were you came here? Well, you need to know that for. You don't need to know that. So I said, all right, that's fine. Shall I tell you about me then? So I start to tell them about me, born in Jamaica, blah, blah, blah. When I came here, what I experienced. And you want to see oh, Lord, you really got through all of that? I said, yes, Mommy. He said, yes, it's the same thing. I was a nurse, you know. And then they start to Lord, girl, if you know the things I go through. And then they start to share their stories. When you hear their stories, oh my gosh, it makes you want to cry. Some of the things they went through. A lot of them came here as professionals. They ended up in factories, driving buses, on trains. And, you know, as I said, when they share their stories, and I said, have you ever shared these stories with your children? Have you ever told your grandchildren? No, they don't need to know that. What do they need to know that for? And I said, Mom, it will help them to know who they are. And then if they suffer racism, they will know that the racists are talking nonsense. Oh, yes, you're right, you know, you're right. And that's how I get them to share. The partner, the patois version. From the devil was a boy, the penny them change hand and turn in a pound. Cast for pay rent and buy food, the money enough to go round. Lord, them work hard for throw 1 hand, 2 hand, or maybe 3. Forget the draw for granny new teeth and the picnic them school fee. Paying the partner that blessed generation connecting thread was safer than using the money to prop up the mattress on your broke down bed. Okay, can I leave it there or do you want to?
Brilliant. Go again, another one.
Okay. Papa marry mama because his partner job meant him could afford the ring. With no parental backative or bank account, the partner was the only thing. Today, The partner strong like lion me here. Just with a different face. No more counting money on the kitchen table, because it's in a different place. The modern partner come nowadays in a different disguise of standing orders and technology, because we did get sting and I forget wise. There's so much money like butter pan post mouth. For poor man it's too much temptation. For him hop on one plane heading for the sun and take a permanent vacation.
Brilliant.
There you go.
Oh, you get the inspiration to write all these things?
I don't even know, as I said, I just want to record my legacy. I had to lose my patois. Again, even though I developed this American accent for a couple of days, I had to lose my patois when I went to school in Wythenshawe. But when I left home, and I used to go and visit my cousin, and I'd listen to his friends, his Rasta friends talking, and I'd listen to Miss Lou, Louise Bennett from Jamaica. She's one of my role models, and that's how I managed to learn to speak patois again. Yeah. But it was just because I want to just save. I've got things that maybe most people won't know about, and I just wanted to share them, my legacy.
Okay. Have you done lots of traveling?
I don't know. I've been to a few places, because I've been to Jamaica quite a few times, because I made sure that I took my daughters back to Jamaica as soon as I could, so that they could see where I came from, get to know their country. And then when my oldest girl got married, her husband is from Gambia, and he took us to meet his family. And I absolutely love Gambia. It's like Jamaica when I was a little girl. Been to Gambia a few times. Where have I been? I've been to Cuba. And I remember with the Jamaica Society Holiday Club, we went on a cruise one year on the other side of Jamaica, because we didn't visit the other side of the Caribbean, because we visited all the small islands, which was, again, it was amazing. We spent a day in each island. Where else have I been? Been all over the place, man. Wales, Scotland, all over the place.
Did you have any plans to go back to Jamaica to live?
Yes. My brother, from the day I set foot in this country, my plan was to be the best that I could be. And as soon as I had enough money, I was going to go back to Jamaica. But it just didn't happen.
At which age?
Well, as soon as I could save enough money, basically, to go back, to get on a plane. And then as I got to be an adult and realized that was a load of nonsense, so I decided, right, when I retire, I saved for years and decided when I retire, I'm going to buy a piece of land in Portland and build my house out there. That was my plan. I even got somebody who was going to build a house for me. And then my cousin, he kept saying to me, because for a couple of years, the Jamaica Observer published my partner money stories in their Sunday pull-out magazine. And so my distant cousins got to know my name. And I remember my cousin is saying to me, they call me Kelly, I know you're coming back to Jamaica, but I don't think it's a good idea. I think if you're coming, you shouldn't build a house and come out here. You need to go in a gated community. That's what he said to me. And then he told me he had to chase one of our cousins away, who came and asked him, what happened to your rich cousin? You can ask her to send me some money. And he had to tell her to go away because I used to send them money all the time, pay bills, until I found out, unfortunately, they were asking me for money they didn't need. But my uncle then said to me before he passed, bless him, he said to me, Kelly, if any of them ask you for any money, check with me first, and let me tell you if it's true or not. And then when Uncle passed, I just decided, no, I'm not sending any more money out there. I've got 2 cousins on the Heron side who I help sometimes, but yeah, then the chap who was going to build my house, he actually, but I remember when I asked him, because he was saying to me that sometimes, they take your stuff and they disappear and they say it's been stolen and it's actually people are building it and they rob you. So he said, Deanne, I won't take one more penny from you, because he was actually my friend's brother. And he said to me, Deanne, I won't take one more penny from you than, it cost me to build your house. And when I told him what my cousin said and asked him what he thought, something, Deanne, I've been thinking that for a long time. And he said to me, I could make a lot of money from you, you know, Deanne. But he said, no, I couldn't sleep in my bed at night knowing that I build you this house and if something happened to you. So he said, no, I think you need to listen to your cousin. And if you come out here, go in a gated community. So I thought about that for a while. And then I just thought, no, I don't want to be like in a prison. I want to be able to wander up and down in my dirty sandal and my tear-up frock. You know, just like I remember people doing. But then, because I've been hearing so many stories about the things that are going on in Jamaica, I'm beginning to think my cousin was right. I'm scared now to go. I'm planning to go on holiday.
Yeah.
Because again, I belong in my ladies group. We go all over the place. We're going to Gambia now that the flights are going again. We're going to Gambia in November because we were planning to go to Jamaica before COVID set in, and we had to cancel the holiday. So we're planning to go to Jamaica next year. So as I said, I want to go and see it for myself. But I've got 2 friends out there who have said to me it's a load of nonsense. Because they said to me, Deanne, it's no worse than England. Because it's true, every day you hear on the news somebody down the road got killed, this happened. And because one friend, she lives in St. Elizabeth with her husband. She lived here for years. And then she got married and they retired in St. Elizabeth. And she said to me when I come, and that's where my father's family from, she said to me when I come, I must come out there because she and her husband go walking day, night, and nobody don't trouble them. And then I've got another friend, I can't remember where he lives, he's a writer. And he said to me that they've retired out there and they've got quite a big house because they've got a big family. And he said to me that their family come all the time, you know, on holiday. And he was said to me, Deanne, when you're ready to come, just let me know. And you come and stay with us and we'll look after you. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to going out there and seeing it for myself.
So what's the longest you spent in Jamaica?
The longest I've spent, I think, just the usual holiday thing, 2 weeks.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
I
that's your
spent
home?
3 weeks. Yes, that's my home, unfortunately. That's my home.
So you put your dream on the back burner at the moment?
I had to, my love. I had to, because my daughter said to me she wasn't going to allow me to go by myself. She said to me, if I go, she's coming out there with me, with, you know, my grandchildren and everybody. And I just thought, no, I can't put my grandchildren in that danger. I wouldn't want anything to happen to them, because I remember there was a case in London, there was a couple, they were worried about their daughter joining a gang, and they packed up and went to Jamaica, I don't know if you remember, and then the girl got killed within a couple of months of them being there. So, but again...
There's good stories and bad stories.
Yeah, but again, I was talking to somebody who said that most of the people committing crimes in Jamaica are not locals. They're people who've been deported from this country or America because they've committed some kind of crime, and because people know that they've got a criminal record, they won't give them work or anything, so the only way they can survive is to, you know, commit crime. So what can you do? So I don't know. I love my country and I still want to go and live there, so maybe one day still. But I'm planning, hopefully next time when my leg gets a little bit better. As I said, we're planning to go next year, so I'm going to go and see what it's like. And then I'm planning to maybe go for a month or maybe a couple of months.
Can I ask you a question? Might be a tough one.
Come on, go on.
While you was in England, while you're still in England, what's the worst time you've been through?
The worst time I've been through?
Very low. Yeah.
I think maybe my daughter's dad and I splitting up. Yeah, because I really thought I'd found, you know, my partner, and I thought we were going to get married and, you know, live happily together forever after, and it didn't quite work out. So I had to sort of really pull myself up and decide, right, no, I am not going to let this get me down, and my children are not going to suffer. I am going to get over this. So yeah, I used my counselling skills on myself and decided, no, I'm better than this. So yeah, maybe that was the worst thing I ever went through, my relationship ending.
Speak it now, the happiest time.
The happiest time? I don't know, maybe when I gave birth to my first daughter. Yeah, when I first became a mother, I was in shock. I couldn't go to sleep. They had to give me sleeping tablets to make me go to sleep, because I just sat for the whole night looking at her, going, my mouth wide open. They're thinking, oh my God, I've produced this.
Human being.
Seriously, I have produced this. And the nurses kept coming in. Are you all right? I think so. So eventually they took the baby away and put her in another room. And I think they gave me tablets, because the next thing I fell asleep. I remember the next morning I woke up and the cot wasn't there. And I'm thinking, oh, what's happened to my baby? Oh my gosh, what's happened to my baby? And I pressed the alarm and said, oh, it's all right, it's okay. We took her out because she was crying. We just wanted you to sleep. So I think, yeah, giving birth to my baby, I think, was maybe buying my house. I think maybe buying my first house, perhaps. Yeah, but I've achieved quite a few things that I wanted to and didn't think I could achieve.
So overall, you think you had a good life so far?
Yes, I've been blessed. I joined the Seventh-day Adventist Church years ago when my partner and I split up, because I remember the best thing my grandma ever did for me was to take me to church. And I thought, okay, I want the best for my children. I want them to learn morals, how to behave, blah, blah, blah. So I went to church, and I was in the church for, I think, nearly 30 years. And then I started researching religion and different things, and there were a lot of things I didn't agree with. So I left the church, but as I keep telling my friends, I haven't turned my back on God. Me and God are still best friends. I've just changed my way of thinking, because I thank God every day for waking me up. I thank him for my 1,000,001 blessings. And, like my brother and my friends say, it's their turn to look after me now, because I've always looked after them. And I've always given to other people, which I didn't even notice, didn't realize until it's all coming back to me now. They're taking care of me. So, what can I say?
What would you like the younger generation to remember Deanne Heron by?
What would I like the younger generation to remember me by? Well, my grandchildren. I would like my grandchildren to remember me being loving and supportive to them, being there to talk to when they needed somebody. And because I've fostered so many children and I've done different things, I think that's what I'd like. That maybe I advise their parents on how to deal with them. I
was going to ask you about Jamaica. I don't know what illness they're going through, but would the sun help?
I think it might, just sitting on a beach, watching the sea ebbing and flowing in the sunshine, I think it would, yeah. Because as a counsellor, and some of my counsellor friends have said the same, because of what I've gone through by myself over the years, they're wondering, because they can't find what is wrong with me. So we're beginning to wonder now if it's something psychological. Although I did have a couple of counselling sessions with somebody, because I wanted to just see, well, am I going through something? And, losing my mom, I lost my brother a couple of months after that. And I had I had one session with him first, and he said, no, Deanne, you've had a rough life, but he said, you've achieved a lot. And he said, you should be really proud of yourself. I can't really pick up anything that is, no, he said, there's one little thing. He said, I'd like to have one more session with you to discuss something. And then the second session, it was my relationships. He said, I think it could be that. But he said, I'm not sure, because you seem to have dealt with it, but I don't know. Again, it could be my mom never meeting my father, stuff like, I don't know. But just taking it one day at a time. I've got so many lovely positives in my life. I'm not focusing on the negatives. And this is what I say to my friends and my family. We're living in interesting times. And we have to focus on the positive things in our lives, not the negatives. And that's what will keep us going and keep us sane.
On that note, thanks for talking to you. Very interesting lady.
Okay, it's my pleasure.
Take One Media.
And I'm thinking, this man looks a bit drunk, and I was just way ahead of him. I don't think we had that kind of a freedom.
I was very sad because I was very close to my sister Christine. It wasn't pleasant. Didn't want to go. I turned a teenager on the plane. That's all I'm going to say. How can I put it? Disappointed. The thing is, I didn't know I was pregnant. Traveling in the cockpit of one of those tiny planes from Antigua to St. Lucia. Are you recording?
Yeah, recording now. So people, you were saying about...
Cut it.
Come on, I can tell you the name of the ship.
What was the name?
No,
Why?
we didn't have nothing like that. We didn't know any TV them times. They said voodoo then. Other people work voodoo on other people's child. Today, anyway, me with today, she put me there. Tell you the truth. One of my friends told me, say, you know something? Your money is inside there, you know. Them always have knife chains, bicycle chain. They beat you up, man. The fellow that was with me, I make him 50-50 partnership with me. And he don't have a dime to put in it.
Oh, so why do women love you so? What about you?
No, but say sweet. That's a lie. Sorry.
No, cut it down. Not too
All right, all right.
Cut it down.